Thank you, Diane. Appreciate that. All right, so I don't know about for you guys, but as the air begins to cool, right, as leaves begin to fall off the trees, as the fields are emptied, a sense of excitement begins to grow in me. And maybe it does for you as well, but maybe for even a different reason that I'm about to get to. You see, it grows in me not because of approaching holidays or some big event that is planned, but did you guys know that on Saturday, deer season opens up? I'm excited about this. And this is weird because this is a thing that I've begun to grow to really love and enjoy since I've been here. Right? I just love just being outside, even if I'm not successful. I just love being out there. And as I've anticipated the season opening up on Saturday, the boys and I have done some work at some property that we hunt at, some public land north of here. And so we've gone out there and have placed cameras and begin to kind of scope out where we want to put stands. And I mean, I was out there this summer, and I was out there when the grass was literally about as high as like my head, literally, and putting cameras out there. And so I went back about a month or so ago to check some of these spots. And one of my cameras is one of those old school ones where you got to put a memory stick in it. And so I find where I put it, or I had a pin on my phone as I'm getting out to that spot. And to my dismay, someone had helped themselves to my memory stick. Right? They didn't take my whole camera, which I didn't fully understand. But they took the memory stick from me, and so it was just really frustrating, right? That work I had done, I got there, and someone found it and decided they wanted to, get what I had. And so it bothered me. And then soon after, I had another camera that, it's one of those cell ones that sends you updates every day. It's kind of fun seeing what the picture of the day is. And soon after that period, this camera stopped talking to me, right? It stopped sending me pictures, and I was starting to grow concerned. I'm like, is there somebody out here that is messing with my stuff? Right? This is one of the downsides of being on public property. And so I was concerned, right? Did someone take it? Every now and then I've had raccoons or things mess with them, you could tell, and they'll flip them down. Did someone take it? Did someone turn it off? And so the thing was, this lack of communication bothered me. Right? I needed to know, was that camera okay? Right, here I am worrying about these silly things, right? But for me, even hundreds of pictures of just the grass blowing because of a windy day would have been helpful. I needed to know, right? The lack of communication bothered me. I needed to know, was that thing okay? And I want to relate this to our relationships, particularly our marriage relationships. They're very similar. Right, just like my silly relationship I have with these cameras out in the woods that honestly really don't matter, right? Our relationships, which do matter, require feedback. They require interaction. They require a regular expression of commitment. You need to know, are we okay in this relationship? What's going on? But the reality is all of these things, the feedback, the interaction, the expression of commitment can be hard in the day-to-day and mundane things about life because we're busy. It's hard to connect and to interact, right? Sometimes for some of us, we have a hard time talking about how we're feeling, right? Sometimes we have a hard time talking about things going on in our lives. It might not be our love language or our strength. And so what happens is when we have a hard time expressing feedback and interaction, it creates a tension in our relationships, right? We need the feedback. We need that regular, consistent connection. We need that regular expression of commitment. But the reality is often in our relationships, we don't do a good job of expressing it, whether it be in a verbal or a physical manner. We don't do a good job of expressing the commitment that we have or should have with our spouses. And so if you have your bulletin on the back, we're going to walk through chapter 4 of the Song of Solomon. Chapter 4, verse 1, all the way to the first verse of chapter 5. And we're just going to kind of ask this question, right? All of us want to exude more commitment to our spouse. We want to be closer connected. And so we're going to kind of ask this question as we look at this text. What do we need to regularly express in our relationships? And how can we do it? And so this is week 6 in our series in Song of Solomon, right? Love is. Evaluating what Scripture says about love and relationships. And as I've mentioned, this book is targeted at marital relationships, but it's certainly applicable to those who are in a serious romantic relationship, whether you're engaged or heading in that direction. And frankly, a lot of the principles here overflow into other aspects of our relationship as well. So as you turn to Song of Solomon chapter 4, verse 1, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a fun caveat to our conversation here today. So this is the chapter of Song of Solomon that gives Song of Solomon its reputation. Right? This is the chapter of Song of Solomon where people don't like to read because of what they see or what they maybe think they see. Right? This is the chapter of Song of Solomon that people have equated to pornography in the Bible. And I got news for you. Some of it is and some of it is not. We're going to talk about this. So maybe if you're not awake yet, maybe you will be here in a moment. But imagine with me, before we dive into our text, it's going to set us up for where we're going. Imagine with me for a moment you're interviewing for a job, right? And you know, as you interview this job, the employer is also looking at other candidates. I want you to take that thought and imagine with me the emotion you would have. It would solicit a sense of competitiveness in you, would it not? If you know the employer is looking for other candidates, you're going to be kind of competitive, right? You want to win their attention. Maybe it might reveal some insecurities that you have, right? You're aware of some defects, and maybe you think they won't like me. Maybe it will reveal some vulnerabilities, right? This won't work, right? If you are competing for a job in that sense, it reveals some emotional issues. And the reality is, until you know that an employer is committed to you, you're going to likely continue to wrestle with those emotions of competitiveness and insecurity and vulnerability. And I bring that up because in our relationships, until you know that that person is fully and completely and 100% committed to you, you're going to wrestle with those emotions as well. A sense of competitiveness. I need to continually win my spouse's attention. A sense of insecurity. Maybe they don't really like me. And so this applies to our relationships. I'm going to give you the blank, and we're going to walk through our text here. What do we need to regularly express in our relationships, and how can we do it? We need to express to them, and these words are kind of make up your own. I only have eyes for you. It's just you. Now, background to this text before we dive into our passage here. The book of Song of Solomon, particularly chapter 4, is understood in many different ways. In fact, I seriously think there is the most disagreement on how to understand Song of Solomon in all of theological circles, compared to literally anything else. Some people would go in a far direction of saying Song of Solomon is just a sex manual, right? It's written pornography. And other people would go way over here and they say Song of Solomon is just all figurative. It's about God's love for us. But some people sit even in the middle and they say, I don't even know how to deal with this, so we're not even going to read it. Like, seriously, how many of you guys have ever had a message in Song of Solomon? Probably not many, let alone a series. And what I want you to understand is the context for Song of Solomon. This is poetic wisdom literature. This book, or I should say song, right? They call it Song of Solomon, would have been played at a social event. And so chapter 4 it's helpful for us to understand all that cultural background as we look at chapter 4, because chapter 4 follows a common cultural pattern that you see in Near Eastern literature, something known as a love wath. Right? It's essentially a love poem. And so all the way up in Song of Solomon so far, we've detailed the relationship of this woman and this man, from kind of their infatuation with each other, kind of this dating and courtship period. Last week we talked about the wedding procession. And so we're kind of telling a story through a love poem, right? Understand that. And now we're moving into the wedding itself. And so the first part of chapter 4 we're going to look at here, I want you to think of it almost as a wedding toast. Right, where the groom gets up and says a few words about his bride, because this is effectively what happens. It follows a structure. So let's go ahead and we're going to read it, and we're going to kind of break this down. Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. He starts out, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like halves of pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built in the rows of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. Until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Right, here's this love waft, this love poem that the groom gives to his bride. And this love poem, again, follows a cultural norm of the day. Now, normally, during this, the guest would say a few words about the bride, followed by an invitation by the bride to her new husband to speak about her beauty. And if you read chapters 1, 2, and even up into 3, you see this kind of this invitation for her to talk to her, for him to talk about her beauty. And then what happens as this man writes this love song, I'm not sure if you see that, this pattern, he begins to praise his wife's beauty from her head down to her toes, right? Starting up top, and we work down. And so this follows a very common structure that was occurring during that day. And so I want to just highlight some of the 8 qualities that he brought up in a very, very quick manner because we got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. But here's something I want to emphasize. Sometimes we look at a passage of Scripture and we like to allegorize it, right? We like to just assume it means one thing and make it up as we go. And then you got some folks that read it completely literally. And so I have a picture that I came across that if this was a literal description of this woman, this is what she looked like. You guys see that? Or he starts out, as he begins talking about the beauty of his bride, he says, your eyes are like doves behind the veil. Right? You can see the little birds peeking out from the eyes of that weird image. Remember a week or so ago we talked about, he described her eyes as the eyes of doves. Right? Apparently that was a compliment. But again, he works down, your hair is like a flock of goats. And you see all the goats there. Your teeth, which I love this part, your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from washing, i.e. they're nice and white and pearly clean. All of which bear twins. The most I can assume there, she has a full set of teeth, right? Right. So he's complimenting her beauty. But he goes on, your lips are like a scarlet thread and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. And when they talk about cheeks, the idea sometimes is your temple, kind of part of your forehead. You can kind of see it up there. Almost looks like a pair of earmuffs. And here's one section I want to pause at for a moment because some theologians kind of have a certain argument the way this is worded here in verse 4. He says, your neck is like the Tower of David, built in rows of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warrior. So what is why is he describing her neck in that manner? It might be to describe its symmetrical shape, but he takes time to talk about those rows of stone. And in fact, if you go back and he was describing her as the mare, there were some images that he evoked as well. And so some people debate, why did he describe her neck in this manner? Maybe it's symmetrical. Maybe he's detailing a necklace that she was wearing. He talks about that a little later on. You'll see that kind of in that image there. But some people debate whether or not he's describing some rolls on her neck. Right? He's describing maybe a neck fat. I think it's kind of interesting. So whether or not that's the direction you lead or not, I bring that up here in a moment because he's, again, detailing what he's seeing, and he's detailing the fact that he's in love with this woman. He goes on, verse 5, you see the images there. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. Not talking about size, we're talking about texture. But I want you to see here in this text, verse 1, he starts by stating that she is beautiful, right? Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. And he ends this section of a love poem with a statement. You are altogether beautiful, my love, in verse 7. There is no flaw in you. He starts and ends with her beauty. Look at verse 6, because as he's describing her beauty, he also describes in figurative language how he feels when he sees her. Verse 6, until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. And again, we talked about how they use the idea of these scents and these smells to have a level of attraction and desire. And so he's talking about the fact, I'm attracted to you, I desire you, I am drawn to you. And he's noting all of these details about who she is physically. He's alluding to the emotional connection he has, and what he is saying is every perfection in perceived defect, if you want to go that route with her neck, it's seen and it's appreciated by him. And what he's saying here is that I am committed to all of this. All right, everything I'm seeing here, I am committed to. Remember, we talked about that last week, the level of commitment he had. He is voicing a verbal commitment to her. Right? All of those perfections, perceived defects, I am for them. And so for us, with our relationships as well, how do you voice commitment to your spouse? He showed commitment last week in this wedding processional on how he honored her and protected her. But now he's voicing this commitment, right? Regardless of what I am seeing, I am committed to you because you are fully and incredibly beautiful. And so in your relationships, how do you voice commitment to your spouse? Right? We can talk about the physical. Certainly, right, we can talk about the fact as we age, some things change. Maybe we have a little less hair. Maybe we have a little bit more weight. But you can talk about the fact, you don't have to mention to them that they've gained weight or lost hair. They're probably aware of that. But you can voice commitment to them by letting them know, hey, I still find you incredibly attractive, incredibly handsome. I'm madly attracted to you. I only have eyes for you. I only have eyes for you. This verbal commitment is incredibly important. Now, this next section that we are going to step into, you'll see here that as they are talking about the physical implications of their commitment, they're voicing descriptions of this. What Solomon communicates to his new bride and his new lover is that she is all he needs to be happy. In fact, that's your next blank. You bring me joy and happiness. He talks about how he only has eyes for her, but now he moves into this relational end where you bring me joy and happiness. He's saying, hey, it's not you plus something, it's only you. Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 8 through 11. He goes on. And again, on all of these passages of Scripture, I'll have them up later as well online. In the video, you'll see in the top right corner, I kind of summarize a little bit of what's going on here. But we do begin here in this section, we had a description of her beauty, but we do begin to move into some physical imagery of intimacy. But he says this, come with me from Lebanon, my bride, come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Amana, from the peak of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of the lions, from the mountains of leopards. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. And again, we don't write love poetry like this anymore, do we? Here we have a description of their wedding night. And he starts out, right, we've had kind of this love waft, think of it as a toast. We're moving into the wedding night, and we have a description of this with a continued expansion upon her beauty. And as you look through this, I'll let your imagination run wild. Sexual references here abound, but not as explicit as some commentators might have you believe. But I do want to point out just a couple things here. First off, I don't know if you noticed there in verse 9 or 10, some weird title he gave her. He calls her my sister. Okay, this is a little weird, right? If you read through that. This is kind of neat because what he's communicating here is a level of connection, right? She's not his sister, but what he's saying here is, all right, we are bonded as if we are blood relatives at this point. So we are married, and married people can get divorced and get separated, but no matter how much you hate your sister, they're still your sister. And so what he's saying here is we are connected forever and always. You bring me complete joy and happiness. And as he talks about this level of connection, right, we're moving into the physical levels of connections. He says, you have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. The Hebrew here is incredibly unclear, I should say. Theologians debate on kind of what he's getting at when he uses the language, right, you have taken my heart away. In a sense, it can mean I am hopelessly in love with you, or it can mean you have heartened me. In a sense, you have sexually aroused me. And I think the text is intentionally unclear there. I think it implies that both exist there, right? I am completely captivated with you. I am hopelessly in love with you, and frankly, I am sexually attracted to you. So I think it's kind of interesting as you look at this text. Again, let your imagination run wild. As we move into, there's chapter 4, verse 9. As we look at that passage, and as we move into the next one for sure, as I was reading this and studying this, it was so hard to kind of interpret what's going on. Because you got some people that say we have literally a sex manual, right? Here's literally the kind of sex they were having. That was literally how descriptive some of the stuff is. And on the other end, you have people who are like, this isn't about sex, this is about us and Jesus. And I was like, yes, us and Jesus are important, but that's not what it's going at either. I kind of was arriving in my mindset that what's going on here is this is, again, a love poem. And I kept thinking in my mind, this is so clear yet unclear. You can feel the physical intimacy building here, but I really can't tell you exactly how. And I came across one other theologian that finally actually said the same thing, and I don't know if he said this or I did, so it's there, but I kind of arrived at this next session as vaguely specific. It's vaguely specific. It's dripping with sexually suggestive material, yet frankly, no good hermeneutic process can make you definitively say that either. But there are some things we can. I'll point it out here. Chapter 4, verse 12. Again, wedding night. They're moving into sexual intimacy. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A spring locked, a fountain sealed, right? She is a virgin. Verse 13. Your shoots are an orchid of pomegranates with all choicest fruits, henna and nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, and all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, and all choice spices. A garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon, right? Describing her beauty, her untouched beauty. Vaguely specific. You can see it's dripping with sexually suggestive material. And it appeals to him physically, right? Just like a garden with varied spices, so are the pleasures of this woman's love. Verse 15, as you look throughout Scripture, a spring of water is often used as a metaphor for sexual love, right? We have a garden fountain, a well of living water and flowing streams from Lebanon, right? We are certainly moving into the realm of sexual intimacy. But again, vaguely specific. What we see here building up in this love poem is this relationship isn't purely carnal, but what we see here is an emotional and relational connection that manifests itself in a physical way. These two individuals know each other. They have grown closer together emotionally and physically, and now it's natural for them to grow together closer in a physical manner. And what you see here is that physical pleasure, right? Pleasure comes from physical interaction, but it's dependent upon the relational connection, right? He is talking about the fact that she brings him full joy and happiness. He brings her full joy and happiness. And this level of connection and a physical capacity is dependent upon their emotional and relational connection. And this is how God designed us as man and woman, right? As we grow together physically, as we grow together relationally and emotionally, it's natural for us to grow together physically. And this is done in the context of a committed relationship. So if you're here today, and some of you guys, I could tell you're feeling a little tense as we talk about this. We're talking about sex in church. But for real, as you come in today, and you and your spouse might be disagreeing on what sexual intimacy looks like, the reality is your relational connection is probably struggling as well. If you're struggling physically, you're probably struggling relationally and emotionally. Because these things are meant to go hand in hand. And that's what we kind of see as we reach this period of their relationship, right? They have developed this relationship, and now it manifests itself in a physical way. And so if you're here today and you and your spouse don't agree on what sex looks like or physical intimacy looks like, realistically, your relationship is struggling also. So I want you to just consider that as well. If there's tension and disagreement, maybe there's disagreement in other places, and that's just a sign of that. So, this is fun. When I do puzzles, we're gonna transfer from sex to puzzles, okay? I've done this since I was young. When I would do puzzles with my mom and my sisters, I had fun taking a puzzle piece at the very beginning and hiding it, right? Because I wanted to be the person to put the last piece in that puzzle. And eventually they caught on to me doing this. But I bring that up because, right, as a puzzle piece is to a puzzle, right, completing that complete picture that you are trying to put together, so are these two individuals for each other, right? We've reached this period in their relationship. They're drawing together closer, and now we reach this final excitement phase, put it that way, right? And there is a sense that they complete each other. This relationship has now gone completely full circle, right? Emotional, relational, and now physical. All those elements are coming together, and there is a sense that they complete each other. And this is important for us to express in our relationship as well, certainly in a physical manner, but also in that relational and emotional manner as well, because those are all tied together. A sense of completion, right? What you see here in our text is they have full satisfaction in each other, certainly from a physical capacity, which we'll get at in a moment, but also from a relational and emotional one as well. So let's go ahead and have fun with this. And this is pretty obvious. I'll let the imagery speak for itself. You see an invitation there for the consummation of their marriage. Chapter 4, verse 16. She says, "Awake, O north wind, and come, O south wind. Blow upon my garden and let its spices flow," right? I am open for business. That's one way to put it. "Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits." Right? An invitation for the consummation of marriage, right? This is kind of the high point in the Song of Solomon, right? That she's maintaining this metaphor of a garden, right? And the garden is now open. And she has this invitation in verse 16, chapter 1, verse 5. He has accepted it and he talks about it, right? "I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with wine." So again, the poetry here is kind of discreet, somewhat, and kind of restraint. But you see the joys of this sexual love without the vulgarity. Right? There is a consummation of their marriage. They are brought together in a physical capacity. And I just want to point out one thing here before we move on. That last sentence there in verse 1, is that weird to you guys? I hope it is. Right? He says there at the very end, right, after their marriage has been consummated, "Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love." Right? This isn't an invitation for a group orgy, if you're wondering, okay? All right, this is the weird stuff you read in some of these way off things in theological commentaries. Again, we got to go back to the proper placement of this text culturally, right? This is a love song. We are meant to sing this in front of a crowd. There's a group of people involved. And so maybe there's an invitation for them to join in part of this song, but also it spoke to a cultural norm during that day where weddings lasted not for an evening or a day itself, but days on end, where there was the consummation of the marriage, and then they came out later and they had a feast and they celebrated. And so maybe that's what that's describing. But again, what you see there is they are articulating a sense of complete happiness in each other. They have now realized this physical connection that they have been desiring. There is full satisfaction that they find in each other. And again, my kids are in the room. We can talk about this more if you want in a different setting. But we see a full satisfaction physically, intimately, and certainly relationally and emotionally. And that's what I really want to lean on as well. Obviously, this chapter in Song of Solomon has a heavy physical, sexual connection, but it also really leans on those other elements of the relationship, the emotional and the relational. And so when you think about this element with your spouse, right? We're going to do this in the proper context, in a marriage context. How do you complete each other? How do you meet each other's needs physically, right? Is there an agreement on what that looks like? Timing, place, figure out what that looks like. Is there an agreement on how you meet each other's needs emotionally and relationally? Because again, what you see here is you see that full relationship coming together, all those pieces coming together, fully manifests itself in their physical connection. But those were built upon the relational connection from the start. So how do you and your spouse navigate that? So at the beginning, I talked about those cameras I had at that property and how I wanted to know, were they okay, right? I need some type of connection. And for that one cell camera, what you could do is you can request a test picture where nothing triggers it, but it'll just send you a test picture. And so I requested one of those, and all of my anxieties disappeared, right? When I got that test picture back, and apparently nothing had moved. Literally, nothing had moved. So it's probably not a good spot for a stand. But I now realize, hey, that picture, that camera, it's still there. I got the feedback. I know that there is a connection. And we need to know that as well in our relationships. If there's not a physical connection, there's likely not an emotional or relational connection. So what's missing in your relationships? Maybe it's that physical connection. But if that physical connection is missing, maybe that relational connection is missing. Maybe that emotional connection is missing. And ultimately, it comes down to the level of commitment we're articulating to our spouses. How do you express that in a verbal and physical way? Again, some suggestions there. You let them know, hey, I only have eyes for you. You are beautiful despite any perfections or imperfections you might see in yourself. Right? You bring me complete joy and happiness. You complete me. This is how God's made us, right? We're meant to draw closer together in a physical capacity. So I want us to, this week, these are not questions we'll do in a group, but questions that I want you to wrestle with yourself or at least your spouse. 2 questions, actually really 4. Are you experiencing disagreements regarding physical intimacy with your spouse? How does this relate to your relational connection? As you can see, not a group question. Question number 2, how does your spouse express commitment to you? How do you do this for them? Let's bow our heads in order of prayer. Lord, thank you for this text. And man, it's fun to talk about in this setting. But God, this is how you built us and designed us, Lord, as we in our marital relationships draw closer together in a relational and emotional way. Lord, you've designed us to draw closer together in a physical capacity. And God, I know all of our relationships, and one of those 3 areas certainly has room for growth. And so, Lord, I pray where there might be sexual tension in relationships here, Lord, where there might be emotional tension, where there might be unmet needs relationally and emotionally, Lord, I pray that we as spouses, as followers of you and representatives of you, can better represent you in our relationships and show that commitment to each other, both in a physical way and certainly in a verbal manner. Lord, I pray for our relationships and our marriages. Make them stronger. Help us be focused upon you. And Lord, may all that's said and done in the private of our homes and in the public sphere bring you honor and glory. We love you, Lord. In your name, amen.